And so you can see why I don't think it matters what is seemingly happening on the front end. Employment, unemployment, no landing, soft landing, hard landing, none of it matters. Hey guys, Ralph here from the Endgame Investor, and today we're going to discuss something that is counterintuitive. In retrospect, it makes a lot of sense. When you first hear about the idea, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. I discussed it a little bit in my last video. We're going to go into a little bit more detail now. You can find my last video up here in this card. And I went into this in more depth on the Endgame Investor on Substack. Link in the description below to check it out there. And basically, what is happening now is that the front end of the economy seems to be doing a little bit better than other economists or Keynesian statisticians or whatever you want to call them, whatever they are, better than they anticipated. Unemployment is back down. The job numbers are higher. Whether you think they're manipulated or not is besides the point. My point is that it doesn't matter what is going on in the front end or what is seemingly going on in the front end if you think that the numbers are manipulated and meaningless, because what matters is the back end. And the cut in rates by 50 basis points has severely tightened conditions on the back end, and I will show you all the evidence that this is actually happening. By tightening conditions in the back end, I mean in the plumbing. There are trillions of dollars that are traded every night between banks, treasuries for cash, cash for treasuries. The amount of these trades is going higher and higher because of the rate cut, for two reasons. First of all, when you cut rates, the value of treasuries rises. And when the value of treasuries rises, you need more dollars to trade them in for repos. The second reason is that when rates go lower, higher rate debt is paid off. So if a bank has higher rate debt, it is paying it off from existing reserves. So what you have are two things happening at once on the back end. You have reserves falling faster than they otherwise would, and you have repos rising faster than they otherwise would because you need more money to fund the repos because treasuries are more valuable than they were before the rate cut.
It just occurred to me that I could set up a frequency harmonic between the deflector and the shield grid using the warp field generator as a power flow anti-attenuator, and that, of course, naturally created an amplification of the inherent energy output.
See that?
And so let's show you this graphically.
Oh, he's pulled his arms off!
Very graphically. This is illustrative of debt being paid down, higher rate debt being paid down out of reserves. I'll show you that it's coming from reserves in a second. This is the Bank Term Funding Program, the regional bank bailout that started in March 2023. You can see here that it is being paid down faster now. This is ever since the rate cut. The outstanding balance, I think it's now at around $73 billion, has fallen by about $25 billion since the rate cut, which means that these higher rate loans, these loans were given out when rates were higher and now rates are lower. And so they are being paid down out of reserves, which are now paying lower interest rates than the debt that's being held in this facility, which is higher than the interest on reserve. So it's being paid down. But this is just representative of what's happening throughout the economy now. Now, if you have locked in higher rate debt and you're being paid less in reserves, you're going to pay down that debt through the reserves, and your reserves are going to fall. We can see that in this next chart over here. We can see the red line is the previous crisis level of reserves, not the apocalypse. I was wrong there. It is the regional banking crisis level of reserves. Please ignore this word over here. You can see here that we were at $2,999 billion on March 8th, 2023, just prior to the regional banking crisis. We are now at 3.089 trillion, down from about 3.6 trillion up here in around February. And you can see here this latest plunge in reserves does not correspond to any month end. You can see these little points here, down here, down here, down here, over here. Also at the beginning of 22, they correspond to either month end or year end or quarterly end or tax days, where you'd expect reserves to fall. But here there is no correspondence to a tax day or to a month end day. Reserves are just falling. And why are they falling? Because of the rate cut and higher rate debt are being paid down with reserves. So my theory is when we cross the $3 trillion threshold of previous reserves level, we will start to see serious problems in the plumbing. And you can see here that the repos the overnight repos of treasuries to cash, cash to treasuries between banks is has reached a new peak here of $2.523 trillion, and it's heading up pretty fast now. Why is that? Because when rates go down, treasuries that need to be traded for cash, treasuries are worth more, so you need more cash to trade them. So that cash has to be there. And now if we take this number, $2.523 trillion, you see over there, and go back to the previous slide, we're at reserves levels 3.089 trillion. These dollars have to come from somewhere. They have to exist, right? Existing is basically all they do.
But existing is basically all I do.
If they don't exist, well, then you can't have these repos going on night after night after night, and something clogs. We can see here that this is the daily change in repo volume every night, and it's been megaphoning since the end of 2022. These fluctuations daily in repos every night are getting pretty wild, and they will keep getting wilder as we get closer and closer to the final clog. They're moving between 200 and $400 billion a night now, right? So things are going to get pretty volatile until we hit a clock. And we can see here on the repos to reserves ratio, this is primarily what I'm following at the Endgame Investor. You can get a day-by-day update there. This was the previous level of the Repocalypse when there was last a clog in the system on September 17th, 2019. This is the day later. We had 83.47906% of repos to reserves, and right now we are at 76%. You can see here that this line has moved up from about 66% 2 weeks ago, or was it 3 weeks ago? 2 or 3 weeks ago, 66%, now 76%. It's been going almost vertical since then. Why is that? Because reserves are falling fast and repo volumes are rising fast for the reasons that I already stated on this video. And so we are within weeks of hitting the 83.479% Repocalypse ratio here. And so you can see why I don't think it matters what is seemingly happening on the front end. Employment, unemployment, no landing, soft landing, hard landing, none of it matters. What matters is that when the plumbing gets clogged, the Fed is going to have to stop QT, and they're going to have to print again. Now, the thing is, there is a further problem here that you could say, oh, they're going to cut to zero. But if they cut to zero, what happens to all of that locked in higher rate debt? Banks and other players are going to want to pay it down as fast as possible and take out new debt. So they're going to have to use more of their reserves to pay down that old debt and find someone who's willing to loan them money at 0% rates. And it's not going to be any bank, which is probably going to be out of reserves because they've paid down higher rate debt with those reserves. So the Fed is going to be in a catch-22. If they cut rates to zero, they're going to have even worse problems on the back end. But if they don't, there's going to be a crash. So what they're going to have to do is buy the bonds again and QE and print a lot of money, trillions of dollars in a few days or a few weeks, and that is going to cut the monetary system loose, I think. And I think this is perfect timing with what could be the trigger for World War III if Israel hits Iran or hits their nuclear facilities. We don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen, but there's a lot of discussions going about it now. And when we have monetary issues coinciding with potential nuclear issues in the world, it's time to end this video. This is Rafi of the Endgame Investor. Check out the Endgame Investor on Substack and check out my Patreon, patreon.com/endgameinvestor, where this week we are going to discuss why, according to biblical law, futures contracts that are unbacked are explicitly forbidden. You can get that for as little as $3 a month, and other lessons in monetary policy and economics from thousands of years ago.